Hello and welcome to day 177 in the Not Alone Today Chronological Bible Reading Plan. Today we are in 2 Chronicles chapters 29 to 31 and we are still in the Christian Standard Bible.
Chapter 29. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestor David had done.
In the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the Lord's temple and repaired them. Then he brought in the priests and Levites and gathered them in the eastern public square. He said to them, "Hear me, Levites. Consecrate yourselves now and consecrate the temple of the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Remove everything impure from the holy place. For our ancestors were unfaithful and did what is evil in the sight of the Lord our God. They abandoned him, turned their faces away from the Lord's dwelling place, and turned their backs on him. They also closed the doors of the portico, extinguished the lamps, did not burn incense, and did not offer burnt offerings in the holy place of the God of Israel. Therefore the wrath of the Lord was on Judah and Jerusalem, and he made them an object of terror, horror, and mockery, as you see with your own eyes. Our fathers fell by the sword, and our sons, our daughters, and our wives are in captivity because of this. It is in my heart now to make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that his burning anger may turn away from us. My sons, don't be negligent now, for the Lord has chosen you to stand in his presence, to serve him and to be his ministers and burners of incense."
Mahath, son of Amasai, and Joel, son of Azariah of the Kohathites. Kish, son of Abdi, and Azariah, son of Jahalelel from the Merarites. Joah, son of Zimmah, and Eden, son of Joah from the Gershonites. Shimri and Joel from the Eleazarphanites. Zechariah and Mattaniah from the Asaphites. Jahiel and Shimei from the Hemanites. Shemaiah and Uziel from the Jeduthunites.
They gathered their brothers together, consecrated themselves, and went according to the king's command by the words of the Lord to cleanse the Lord's temple.
The priests went to the entrance of the Lord's temple to cleanse it. They took all the unclean things they found in the Lord's sanctuary to the courtyard of the Lord's temple. Then the Levites received them and took them outside to the Kidron Valley. They began the consecration on the first day of the first month, and on the 8th day of the month they came to the portico of the Lord's temple. They consecrated the Lord's temple for 8 days, and on the 16th day of the first month they finished.
Then they went inside to King Hezekiah and said, "We have cleansed the whole temple of the Lord, the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and the table for the rolls of the bread of the presence, and all its utensils. We have set up and consecrated all the utensils that King Ahaz rejected during his reign when he became unfaithful. They are in front of the altar of the Lord."
King Hezekiah got up early, gathered the city officials, and went to the Lord's temple. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, and 7 male goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, for the sanctuary, and for Judah. Then he told the descendants of Aaron the priest to offer them on the altar of the Lord. So they slaughtered the bulls, and the priests received the blood and splattered it on the altar. They slaughtered the rams and splattered the blood on the altar. They slaughtered the lambs and splattered the blood on the altar. Then they brought the goats for the sin offering right into the presence of the king and the congregation, who laid hands on them. The priests slaughtered the goats and put their blood on the altar for a sin offering, to make atonement for all Israel. For the king said that the burnt offering and sin offering were for all Israel.
Hezekiah stationed the Levites in the Lord's temple with cymbals, harps, and lyres, according to the command of David, Gad, the king's seer, and prophet Nathan. For the command was from the Lord through his prophets. The Levites stood with the instruments of David, and the priests with the trumpets.
Then Hezekiah ordered that the burnt offering be offered on the altar. When the burnt offering began, the song of the Lord and the trumpets began, accompanied by the instrument of King David of Israel. The whole assembly was worshipping, singing the song, and blowing the trumpets. All this continued until the burnt offering was completed. When the burnt offerings were completed, the king and all those present with him bowed down and worshipped. Then King Hezekiah and the officials told the Levites to sing praise to the Lord in the words of David and of the seer Asaph. So they sang praises with rejoicing and knelt low and worshipped.
Hezekiah concluded, "Now you are consecrated to the Lord. Come near and bring sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings to the Lord's temple." So the congregation brought sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings, and all those with willing hearts brought burnt offerings. The number of burnt offerings the congregation brought was 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 lambs. All these were for a burnt offering to the Lord. 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep and goats were consecrated.
However, since there were not enough priests, they weren't able to skin all the burnt offerings. So their Levite brothers helped them until the work was finished and until the priests consecrated themselves. For the Levites were more conscientious to consecrate themselves than the priests were. Furthermore, the burnt offerings were abundant, along with the fat of the fellowship offerings and with the drink offerings for the burnt offering.
So the service of the Lord's temple was established. Then Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced over how God had prepared the people, for it had come about suddenly.
Chapter 30. Then Hezekiah sent words throughout Israel and Judah, and he also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the Lord's temple in Jerusalem to observe the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel. For the king and his officials and the entire congregation in Jerusalem decided to observe the Passover of the Lord in the second month, because they were not able to observe it at the appropriate time. Not enough priests had consecrated themselves, and the people hadn't been gathered together in Jerusalem. The proposal pleased the king and the congregation, so they affirmed the proposal and spread the message throughout all Israel, from Beersheba to Dan, to come to observe the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel, in Jerusalem, for they hadn't observed it often as prescribed.
So the couriers went throughout Israel and Judah with letters from the hand of the king and his officials, and according to the king's command, saying, "Israelites, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, so that he may return to those of you who remain, who have escaped the grasp of the kings of Assyria. Don't be like your ancestors and your brothers who were unfaithful to the Lord, the God of their ancestors, so that it made them an object of horror, as you yourselves see. Don't become obstinate now, like your ancestors did. Give your allegiance to the Lord and come to his sanctuary that he has consecrated forever. Serve the Lord your God so that he may turn his burning anger away from you. For when you return to the Lord, your brothers and your sons will receive mercy in the presence of their captors and will return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful. He will not turn his face away from you if you return to him."
The couriers traveled from city to city in the land of Ephraim and Manasseh as far as Zebulun, but the inhabitants laughed at them and mocked them. But some from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. Also, the power of God was at work in Judah to unite them to carry out the command of the king and his officials by the words of the Lord.
A very large assembly of people was gathered in Jerusalem to observe the festival of unleavened bread in the second month. They proceeded to take away the altars that were in Jerusalem, and they took away the incense altars and threw them into the Kidron Valley. They slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the month. The priests and Levites were ashamed, and they consecrated themselves and brought burnt offerings to the Lord's temple. They stood at their prescribed posts according to the law of Moses, the man of God. The priests splattered the blood received from the Levites, for there were many in the assembly who had not consecrated themselves, and so the Levites were in charge of slaughtering the Passover lambs for every unclean person to consecrate the lambs to the Lord. A large number of the people, many from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun, were ritually unclean, yet they had eaten the Passover contrary to what was written. But Hezekiah had interceded for them, saying, "May the good Lord provide atonement on behalf of whoever sets his whole heart on seeking God, the Lord, the God of his ancestors, even though not according to the purification rules of the sanctuary." So the Lord heard Hezekiah and healed the people. The Israelites who were present in Jerusalem observed the festival of unleavened bread 7 days with great joy, and the Levites and the priests praised the Lord day after day with loud instruments. Then Hezekiah encouraged all the Levites who performed skillfully before the Lord. They ate at the appointed festival for 7 days, sacrificing fellowship offerings and giving thanks to the Lord, the God of their ancestors.
The whole congregation decided to observe 7 more days, so they observed 7 days with joy. For King Hezekiah of Judah contributed 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep for the congregation. Also, the officials contributed 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep for the congregation, and many priests consecrated themselves. Then the whole assembly of Judah, with the priests and Levites, the whole assembly that came from Israel, the resident aliens who came from the land of Israel, and those who were living in Judah, rejoiced. There was great rejoicing in Jerusalem, for nothing like this was known since the days of Solomon, son of David, the king of Israel.
Then the priests and the Levites stood to bless the people, and God heard them, and their prayer came into his holy dwelling place in heaven.
Chapter 31. When all this was completed, all Israel who had attended went out to the cities of Judah and broke all the sacred pillars, chopped down the Asherah poles, and tore down the high places and altars throughout Judah and Benjamin, as well as in Ephraim and Manasseh, to the last one. Then all the Israelites returned to their cities, each to his own possession.
Hezekiah re-established the divisions of the priests and Levites for the burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, for ministry, for giving thanks, and for praise in the gates of the camp of the Lord, each division corresponding to his service among the priests and Levites. The king contributed from his own possessions for the regular morning and evening burnt offerings, the burnt offerings of the Sabbaths, of the new moons, and of the appointed feasts, as written in the law of the Lord. He told the people who lived in Jerusalem to give a contribution for the priests and Levites so that they could devote their energy to the law of the Lord. When the word spread, the Israelites gave liberally of the best of the grain, new wine, fresh oil, honey, and all of the produce of the field, and they brought in an abundance, 1/10 of everything. As for the Israelites and Judahites who lived in the cities of Judah, they also brought 1/10 of the herds and flocks, and 1/10 of the dedicated things that were consecrated to the Lord their God. They gathered them into large piles. In the 3rd month, they began building up the piles, and they finished in the 7th month. When Hezekiah and his officials came and viewed the piles, they blessed the Lord and his people, Israel.
Hezekiah asked the priests and the Levites about the piles. The chief priest Azariah of the house of Zadok answered them, "Since they began bringing the offering to the Lord's temple, they have been eating and are satisfied. We have been eating and are satisfied, and there is plenty left over because the Lord has blessed his people. This abundance is what is left over."
Hezekiah told them to prepare chambers in the Lord's temple, and they prepared them. The offering, the 10th, and the dedicated things were brought faithfully. Conaniah the Levite was the officer in charge of them, and his brother Shimei was second. Jehiel, Azaziah, Neath, Asahel, Jerimoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mahath, and Benaniah were deputies under the authority of Conaniah and his brother Shimei, by appointment of King Hezekiah and of Azariah, the chief official of God's temple.
Korah, son of Imnah, the Levite, the keeper of the east gate, was over the free will offerings to God, to distribute the contribution to the Lord and the consecrated things. Eden, Miniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah in the cities of the priests were to distribute it faithfully under his authority to their brothers by divisions, whether large or small. In addition, they distributed it to males registered by genealogy 3 3 years old and above, to all who would enter the Lord's temple for their daily duty, for their service and their responsibilities according to their divisions. They distributed also to those recorded by genealogy of the priests by their ancestral families, and the Levites 20 years old and above by their responsibilities in their divisions, to those registered by genealogy with their dependents, wives, sons, and daughters of the whole assembly, for they had faithfully consecrated themselves as holy, and to the descendants of Aaron, the priests, in the common fields of their cities, in each and every city. There were men who were registered by name to distribute a portion to every male among the priests, and to every Levite recorded by genealogy.
Hezekiah did this throughout all Judah. He did what was good and upright and true before the Lord his God. He was diligent in every deed that he began in the service of God's temple, in the instruction and the commands, in order to seek his God, and he prospered. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Today we have read 3 chapters from 2 Chronicles to see the chronicler's account of Hezekiah's reign. And again, as typical of the chronicler, whoever they are, they gave us a more detailed account into the spiritual activities of that tenure. We were told in chapter 29 that Hezekiah began to reign at the age of 25, and immediately he swung into action to begin the restoration of the worship of God by ordering the cleansing of the temple. In chapter 30, we were told of a restoration of the celebration of the Passover, and we're given a detailed account of all that happened in ensuring they had a fruitful and joyous celebration. In chapter 31, we were told about the removal of idolatry. Every item that was used in worshiping other gods were all taken down and taken to Kidron Valley. And then the rest of the chapter was devoted to talking about offerings for Levites. And so we're given a comprehensive account of how people gave generously to the Levites so that they can, as God has always planned it, devote themselves to the worship of God. And they had more than enough, indeed, an abundance, an overwhelming abundance that had to be shared amongst all the Levites by the people that were delegated to oversee that distribution. And those are the 3 chapters we read today. We'll flip the page to continue the narrative tomorrow. But first, we're going to talk about the things that stood out to us from the parts that we read today.
Verse 36 stood out to me, especially the line that says that then Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced over how God had prepared the people. And today, whilst I was doing my devotional, there's a part I read in the New Testament on how that the harvest is ready, but the workers are few. And then Jesus said that we should pray that there will be workers, that God should bring workers to the harvest field. And when I read that part where Hezekiah rejoiced how God had prepared the people, I just used that for prayer as well, that God will make us a prepared people. We won't be met dilly-dallying, but we'll be met with our hand ready to war, our hand ready to work, to act, and not just be complacent. What about you?
For me, it's verse 34, the line that says, "For the Levites were more conscientious to consecrate themselves than the priests were." The context was the fact that they said there were not enough priests that had been consecrated to oversee the skinning of the burnt offerings, which was meant to be their responsibilities. So their Levite brothers helped them. But actually, it turned out that these Levite brothers were even more conscientious to consecrate themselves than the priests were. And I found that quite instructive. Priests, the equivalent for priests in today's kind of ecclesial circles would be pastors, But the commentary that was harder to say the Levites were more conscientious to consecrate themselves is just quite interesting. In the Message translation, that part says they ran out of priests qualified to slaughter all the whole burnt offerings. So their brother Levites stepped in and helped out, while other priests consecrated themselves for the work. It turned out that the Levites had been more responsible in making sure they were properly consecrated than the priests had been. And so in a scenario where, quote and unquote, an average church member is even taking their spirituality more seriously than the leaders in the church, that's kind of the picture I'm seeing there. And that's just instructive on many levels, especially for leaders to say, you must always be a cut above, and a call to lead is a call to be more conscientious, to be more responsible in that sense. It's not a competition, but at the end of the day, leadership comes with responsibility, which we must be prepared to take on. Chapter 30, what stood out to you?
The whole chapter stood out to me. I found teamwork very evident in everything that happened, from the king to the priests to the couriers to the Israelites that came. How that before they could even use 7 more days, the king and the congregation had to affirm the proposal. That's teamwork. That is everybody working together. And also giving stood out to me. So first in verses 24 to 25, we read that King Hezekiah first gave 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep, and also his officials then also contributed 1,000 bulls, 10,000 sheep, and many priests consecrated themselves. Also in teamwork is giving. You have to give of yourself and of your resources. It's not just to say I'm part of this team, but I'll just let them carry on, and whenever they need me, they'll call me.
Yeah.
To be a part of a team is to see the work as yours and then work at it with all your might, as though working for God and not for man. And the last part that stood out to me was how that despite all of these things happening and the priests were consecrating themselves and the temple was being cleaned, some inhabitants still laughed at the couriers, bringing the message that they should have assembled themselves and come to Jerusalem. And I wanted to be like, why would they laugh? And the Spirit said, yes, some people would laugh at the work, but some people would humble themselves and join in the work. So it's not for you to say, shake your fingers at the ones laughing, but to just continue in it and to expect that this will happen, but continue in the work with the people that are ready and are willing to join in the work. That stood out to me.
For me, it's verse 18 and 19 and maybe 20 as well, where Hezekiah interceded for those who, quote and unquote, were not like properly fitting to participate in the Passover. And I found that quite interesting. I mean, in the Message translation, it kind of comes out clearly. It says there were a lot of people, especially those from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun, who did not eat the Passover meal because they had not prepared themselves adequately. But Hezekiah prayed for this group of people as follows. He says, may God, who is all good, pardon and forgive everyone who sincerely desires God, the God of our ancestors, even especially those who do not meet the literal conditions stated for access to the temple. And God responded to Hezekiah's prayer and healed the people. And for me, it's striking because it begins to show us the picture of how that, all these regulations, at the end of the day, they are pointing to something. The idea is not necessarily about how well and how finicky we are with keeping the law, which is what the Pharisees would go on to hold in high esteem in the days of Jesus. But really, it comes down to, where is your heart? Are you really, really having your whole heart set on seeking God? If that's the case, God welcomes you. As many as they that worship Him will worship Him in spirit and in truth. And that prayer kind of captures that. May the good Lord provide atonement on behalf of whoever sets his whole heart on seeking God, even though not according to the purification rules of the sanctuary. And I was like, wow, picture of grace already in the Old Testament. Yeah. Finally, chapter 31, what stood out to you?
In 31, the trend of giving continued. So whilst we learned that the king and officials gave bulls and sheep, in here we read about how the people themselves gave liberally of the best of grain, new wine, fresh oil, honey, and the produce of their fields. And they brought in an abundance, a tenth of everything. So much that after everything was brought in, there was a pile of things, and this pile was distributed among the Levites. And this stood out to me because on the one hand, some people are wealthy enough to give like hefty gifts, and while some people are wealthy enough to give what they can afford. Like the gift, the core of the gift does not matter. What matters is the participation of it. I'm just trying to say that we should not hesitate to give because we think we don't have much, or we think we don't have as much as that person did. If you remember the story of Ananias and Sapphira, they wanted to compare what they wanted to give according to what they've seen others doing, but they couldn't do it, and so they lied. And in this stead, if you don't have bulls or you don't have thousands of sheep to give the best of your grain, of your wine, of your time, of your compliments, even of your prayers when you see your work being done. That is what stood out to me.
Thank you. For me, it's just that principle captured in verse 4 when King Hezekiah told the people to give a contribution for the priests and Levites so that they could devote their energy to the law of the Lord. It's a principle that, the way that Jesus puts this when he sends the 70 out is to say that the laborer is worthy of his wages. If you have people that are devoted, that are devoting their energy to stewarding a congregation, to shepherding, to nurturing, to growing, to offering administration, they are supposed to be appreciated in very honorable ways, according to the means of the congregation, according to the means of the setting in which they are doing that.
So that they could continue to devote that same energy to the law of the Lord.
Yeah, it's why some churches would use the language of full-time ministry as though to say, devote all your energy to this and nothing else, on the understanding that then your needs, so to speak, your basic needs will be met. There will be a roof over your head. There will be food on your table. You won't have to worry about that so that you can devote your energies to the Lord. Understandably, there are many ministers, myself inclusive, that would be bivocational ministers because we're doing some other things to support what that looks like. So thank you for joining us for day 177. We'll flip the page, continuing still in 2nd Chronicles, and then moving on to 2nd Kings when we flip the page on day 178. But till then, just remember,
you're not alone
today.
God bless you.